Former South Carolina Republican Governor Mark Sanford, the man who did more to make the Appalachian Trail famous than anybody who's actually hiked it, is on his way to Congress today after winning a special election for the 1st Congressional District seat last night in South Carolina. That seat became vacant earlier this year when the guy who previously held it, Congressman Tim Scott, the guy on the left here, was promoted up to the Senate by Governor Nikki Haley. She picked Tim Scott to fill the seat in the Senate that was vacated by the guy on the right, Republican Senator Jim DeMint. Jim DeMint quit his Senate seat late last year because he got a better offer. He took a job as the guy who runs the Heritage Foundation. Heritage Foundation is a conservative think tank, a supposed font of serious policy analysis and research from a right-wing perspective. It was kind of a weird hire for the Heritage Foundation. Not because Jim DeMint isn't a famous guy, or maybe not even because he's not a capable guy, but Jim DeMint was not the thinkiest United States senator out there. Previously, he had owned an advertising firm. Once he got to the Senate, his legislative agenda was things like sponsoring the Commemorative Coins Reform Act. A bill that, had it passed, would have forced senators to pay for the printing costs of commemorative resolutions. Right? Earth-shifting policy wonkery was not what Jim DeMint was known for in the Senate. Jim DeMint was known as a campaigner. He was a guy who tried to get other super-duper conservative Republicans elected. He backed candidates like Sharon Angle in Nevada. Remember her with the Second Amendment remedies? Christine O'Donnell in Delaware, I am not a witch. Those campaigns flamed out so brightly and magnificently that their glow can still be seen in another galaxy today. But the Heritage Foundation is in the news today because under Jim DeMint's leadership as a think tank, it is trying to kill the prospect of immigration reform. Capital K, capital L, they are trying to kill it. But the Heritage Foundation is not supposed to be a campaigning organization. They're supposed to be a think tank. They're supposed to be an august institution that deals with policy, facts and figures and complex data sets. They can't appear to just be killing immigration with just straight up politics. They have to try to kill immigration reform with something that looks like research, something that looks like a study of some kind. This is the Heritage Foundation's brand spanking new study on immigration reform. A study on immigrants, really. It looks very serious. It has a boring name and everything. The fiscal cost of unlawful immigrants and amnesty to the U.S. taxpayer. Cracking it open to look at the report's conclusions, we see that immigrants are always on welfare. They just take. Immigrants are low achieving and uneducated. Immigrants will never contribute to the economy in any meaningful way because they all have a serious case of the poors. Based on those conclusions and some math so fuzzy that it might as well be television static, the Heritage Foundation assigned a seemingly random number to what they say would be the cost of immigration reform. Guess what? It would cost $1 bazillion. $6 trillion is what they came up with. Their basic argument is that immigrants are parasites, and their children will be too. But wait, there's more. One of the two authors of the report is a guy named Jason Richwine. Not a billionaire Bond villain. He's a doctor. Mr. Richwine has a PhD from Harvard. In order to get that doctorate a couple of years ago, he, of course, had to write a dissertation. His dissertation was called IQ and Immigration Policy. Washington Post's Wonk blog today reporting that that dissertation was a treasure trove of ideas straight out of the era of eugenics. Quote, the average IQ of immigrants in the United States is substantially lower than that of the white native population, and the difference is likely to persist over several generations. Quote, no one knows whether Hispanics will ever reach IQ parity with whites, but the prediction that new Hispanic immigrants will have low IQ children and grandchildren is difficult to argue against. The solution he proposes is an immigration system based on IQ selection. But he says, don't call it that. That would be politically unseemly. Instead, it should be called skills-based immigration. People won't freak out if we call it a skills-based selection process. This was Jason Richwine's academic research on immigration and his corresponding policy conclusions from back in 2009. Basically, the foreigners immigrating to the United States lack the intellectual capacity to properly contribute to white American society. It's innate. They are uneducated. They will always be uneducated. So will their children be. Based on those conclusions that he made back in 2009, it is not difficult to see where the basic idea of the new study from the Heritage Foundation came from. When asked about the authorship of their new immigration report and his past dabbling in well, what seems like eugenics. The Heritage Foundation put out a statement today saying, quote, Dr. Richwine did not shape the methodology or the policy recommendations in the Heritage paper. He provided quantitative support to the lead author. So don't worry, our report is still totally legit. He just did the counting part. He just did the quantitative part. So Mark Sanford, welcome to Washington, where you amazingly do not have the most terrifying past. And immigration reform with enemies like these, I think you may just be just fine.